Welcome to episode 10. Dicks.
Okay, now do the intro.
So this is... It's already doing it. Ready? Wrap it up, Johnny. So this is episode 10. We're going to finally wrap up Bite Down Hard. And more than Bite Down Hard album, we're going to talk about our time together during the time that he was making Bite Down Hard. He also helped me work on many of my project studio clients, personal stuff, whatever. So we had quite the fun life outside of Bite Down Hard in the studio. So we thought we would just wrap up all of that, and then we can just set Byron off to make the alien, the rabbit, the monkey. So saying that, one of the things you'll notice on the liner notes as the album's playing, the little video I made with the full album, you'll notice that it's Byron, does everything. Steve plays some guitar, does the drum tracks. And then there's two other guys, Simon Sticklebush and Adrian Mayweather, which we mentioned before were our alter egos in the studio. So we could work with other people, and if we ever felt we weren't worthy or whatever the situation was, we would just use our alter egos.
Their fault.
Yeah, that's right. My guy is bad taste in everything all at once.
Stupid.
So there were a number of clients and friends and stuff we worked for. So
isn't there a fine line between smart and stupid?
It's hard to deviate. So now, just to precede that, Byron has brought in a song that from an episode or two ago he had mentioned that he had played for me, and it's probably one of the first songs ever that he played for me that I went, I don't like it, get out of here. But I think I was in turmoil at the time.
Yeah, so Steve's always my sounding board all through the years. So I was working on a song, and I got to work with a girl named Emmanuel. I forget her last name.
Rayon?
Possibly. And sometimes in the studio, I got lucky to be to run across people who either play their instruments or singers. She is the real deal as far as singers. She must have had like 3 octaves. She had a vocal coach. She sang at the casino. I think she did the Barbra Streisand thing or whatever, and then she was down in Atlanta and stuff like that. I mean, to hear somebody like that, every time she was in the studio, the hair would stand up in the back
and such a positive person all the time.
Yeah,
she's destined.
Yeah, so she's on. She sang a song called "Happy," which was on my 3rd album called "Koi Paradiso," and I did another song with her, and it was sort of an against the grain song. It was a pure love song, and I don't know for the life of me why I did it. However, it was during the time I was doing Koi Paradiso, and I think it was also the time that I was taking all the drums off my tracks and stuff like that. So one day I went into the studio. This when Steve owned, what did they call it back then? Your studio, the
Sound of One Hand.
Yeah. It used to be Sound of One Hand. Was it still Sound of One Hand? Had you changed the name of it? Steve is
No, it was Sound of One Hand. It was Marty Jones, John Doerr, Ross Murray.
Okay, but this is when I played it too. This is when you were like running the studio at that time.
Oh, right, Liverpool Court.
Okay, so we call it, okay. Right, so so Steve was there. We were in Studio A, which is the big studio, the control room, and I had a new song. But Steve had a real job and was actually running the studio, and he had the stress of running the studio and stuff like that. So, of course, me come galloping in on my unicorn saying, Steve, listen to this. I must have caught him at a bad moment, but it was probably his most visceral reaction to something I played him. It just wasn't his cup of tea at all, and he made that very clear. So the song, I guess, just sort of sat there. It didn't take me much not to want to continue on with it, and so it just sort of sat there. So I recently I've just been going through like one of the many hard drives I have. I got all these songs that are 3/4 finished buried under there, and so this was one of the songs that was sitting there, and I've very little needed to be done with it, and I must say again, I think for my ears and listening to this stuff and listening to the album Bite Down Hard, it's too much Byron. But when I sing with other people, especially with the girls and stuff like that, I really enjoy listening to myself with other people. It just speaks volumes to me that I should be in the studio with other people to make it more interesting for me. And I think other people, I think it really rubs me well. So anyway, this is our first time that Steve's going to be hearing this song.
I don't remember at all any of it, so I must have been preoccupied in some way, shape, or form. I can usually recollect most of the stuff you played me even 1 or 2 times.
Right, so this is not the version that I played you, but yeah.
And it has a video with it now.
Yeah, so it's not all done, but I wanted to bring it, I'll probably post it this week to Steve. It's not all done, but I wanted to play it and be here and watch Steve sort of like...
We'll do it picture in picture here. Like, we'll be watching it, but viewers at home can watch along with us.
Yeah, just make sure you play it loud enough that we can enjoy it.
Here we go, everybody.
So, without a map, with nowhere to go, we never stopped. We hit the gas, and so we drove.
I don't know why I wouldn't have liked that. I think I know why I would have given you that reaction at the time, because probably at the time any little thing would have been the first thing I said that I didn't like, or said, I wouldn't. Remember, I've always said to you, can you let a beat go for a little bit instead of, okay, 4 bar, and then it stops. Where'd that beat go? 4 bar stop. That was always, my pleading to Byron, saying, do a song where it's just, those cool riffs and beats straight through. But, you always had a tendency to Byronic up songs. And I'm only thinking that maybe that's what was bothering me at the time. Like, it never got going. It would get going and then stop, get going and then stop.
The song was 4 minutes long, actually. I cut that down to 2 minminutes.
That was pretty short.
Well, this is what I'm trying to do, I think. These days, of course, that's what's in my head. Short and sweet and out. I don't want to... I think people, to my thoughts are that people are just sort of clicking ahead and stuff like that. So if I make it short and sweet, a lot of these songs that you're playing, you hear the chorus only once, and I'm in and out.
True, I fully agree that I don't know, is it me getting older? Is it me getting tired of listening to the formulaic rock thing? But I don't need to hear the chorus 3 times. You know,
So
2 minutes. Like Elvis Costello said it back in 1980, you know, great song is 2 minutes. You're out.
So there was a guitar solo on this that Brian did. Brian was Brian Smith, who was producing Koi Paradiso. So there was a guitar solo, and it was very sort of jazzy type of thing that he did. A beautiful sounding guitar solo. I had sort of sparse sort of piano chords underneath it. But again, when I found it and I heard it, I'm thinking, okay, so I do the chorus and then I go to the guitar solo off the verse, and then I reprise the chorus again. Right. And
I'll throw a bridge in just before and I'll modulate it. That'd be so cool.
Right.
Just looking for a reason to extend something.
Right. So I basically took the lyrics and I just sort of followed a linear line, and to me, that just sort of was the song right there. It was very sort of 2 minutesy. Perhaps you listen to it a couple more times, you might sort of get a couple of the sort of switches. But I actually added drums to this. There was a lot of no drums on it. And I'm always looking for about 2 minutes just to sort of put something on. It's easier for me to put a video up that's only 2 minutes. I'm not repeating a lot of lyrics on the video either. I just sort of say, it's almost like a tone poem, right?
Well, one thing I did want to say, without trying to avoid the music, but I thought the visuals were really good. What I really like is your use of parallax now. You really got that visual thing going, and using transparency layers and stuff and the way everything moves. Yes. I don't know if that's an algorithm within the app, but if you're doing it, it's really nice, like the way it moves. And now it helps the music, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, to me, it's very sort of simple little 2 minute thing, and I again very affected by especially that middle part where so I had drums under this one part where Manon and I sing, "You're the one I want, you're the one that I need," and so I always sort of was, because I always remember this conversation we've had about running drums through the whole song. But I always get to that part of the song, and it meant to take everything out and just have a guy and a girl say, "You're the one that I want," and it made so much sense to me, to my ears. So that's why you hear those things. It's an emotional thing to take out the drums and just like speak the words.
Were those drums the heavier? I call it the John Bonham part. Was that always that sound?
No.
Okay, because I like those.
Yeah.
Really heavily gated kick drum sound.
Yeah, well, that's so when I played you the song, there was probably very little drums other than the chorus at the end that you heard, our love, our love, our love. But yeah, I just picked one simple beat and just sort of sang to it. Yeah, I thought it was a lot more effective, sort of dragging the song along.
Another thing is that I think the thing that draws you so heavily to it, to me, was, I don't want to say dismissive part, but I've heard Manon, I've heard Susie sing with you, and 2 of his vocal muses that are brilliant singers on their own right, but very disparate. Susie's more breathy and Manon just blow your socks off. I've heard you doing parts with both of them in other songs that really blew me away, and this one I went, yeah. But that's a personal thing to you, right? What you got from that.
Yeah, it's more of there's a lot more of Manon on that song that I didn't put. I just sort of allowed myself to sort of set the song up, and then but the whole chorus, "Our Love," I mean, that was her. I'm just singing underneath her. I'm letting her. It's her voice. I mean, like I'm in love with her voice. I can't. So yeah, I just,
know how good of a singer she is. For me, that wasn't a standout track for her, even though whatever she does, it's perfect. It was, it's another perfect line. It wasn't epic for me.
So it's epic for me on an emotional level. It's a woman. So there's just something. It's the same thing I get when I when I try and draw a beautiful woman. I mean, there's something very sort of erotic, transcendental about that when you have a voice like Manon's and you're sort of singing underneath her, and to me, she's got the voice of the angels and stuff like that. I mean, even when I've played this maybe 100 times this past week, sort of putting it together, even playing it today, I still get the hair stand up on the back. And especially the lyrics, you're the one that I want, you're the one that I need. I mean, certainly you've had that experience, like when somebody's really into you. I mean, it's one of the great feelings of the world. And so, yeah, it's me just sort of trying to think of one of the greatest feelings in the world when somebody's really into you. And when I hear
in grade 9 when you don't really notice a girl or two, and then they say, "Oh, that girl likes you," and you look and you go, "Hey, she's pretty good looking." Immediately you go, "Okay, that's what I like."
Absolutely.
You like me, I like you.
Absolutely. So it's So to me, that's it's epic in that thing. It's just it's beautiful.
Well, that's nice. Well, we'll put the video had gone up. We're just watching the reactions, although I don't think there was much because we always listen to music the same way. We don't say much. Because it's like at a concert. So what do you think of the band? Like, it's stupid, Listen, let it absorb. And I was very impressed with the visuals. I mean, I like the song. I like it.
Well, I'm chuffed that you love the visuals because earlier this week there was no video, and I sort of have to set things up in my head and how to play off these things. It's become a lot simpler for me the last few weeks when I've been throwing these videos, and you've told me, and even our discussion today, showing my words, showing my lyrics on the video, I think helps people hear my music. Because my lyrics are important, and I think words look beautiful on the screen. So so part of it is easy for me now because I know enough when I do my videos to put my words on the screen. But to think of the part, so there's an instrumental part. So I'm thinking, how am I going to deal with the instrumental part? And that was sort of my chuff. And I remember I spent a whole morning just sort of walking around my apartment trying to think about like what the hell am I supposed to do about those things. And then I got this sort of thing about driving and moving a few layers at different times to give the thing like you're in a car. Yeah, okay. Is that what the name of it is? Yeah, okay.
When the stuff in the distance moves slower, this stuff moves faster because...
Okay, well, I just learned a new name. Okay, yeah. I sort of thought of that.
Didn't Alfred Hitchcock do the parallax view or something, a movie?
Sure, I've seen some other stuff on the screen where
the internet can tell you.
Well, even Netflix, the ads on Netflix, if you let the screensaver go, you can see sort of things sort of float down.
The way they do photos.
Is that Parallel X and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. Anytime you have like again, don't quote me on this. This is just what I understand. Like two things in the distance, and one's 5 miles back, and one's 300 yards back. One moves at a certain rate, and the other one's going to move faster because that's perspective, parallax. I could be wrong. I'm sure I'll find out.
So after I sort of figured that part out, there's the part of the song where you just see the lyrics. We never stopped. We hit the gas, and then we drove, and then it fades into the picture of the parallax.
And the bridge. I like the bridge thing you had.
Right. Yeah. So I had to find something. Yeah. So I had to figure it out in my head. What's closest to you that will be running the quickest? And
right.
And then one day I drove to pick up my mom, and I went, guardrails. That's right. I can put freaking guardrails.
They're flying by.
Yeah, they're flying by me. So that's when I figured that part out.
It'd be neat if you had like a blur effect on like just a loop that went really fast.
Well, that's one of the problems I was having rendering. Once I start putting a lot of blur on these things, and there's movement and blur. It starts freaking out my computer, and I end up spending...
Yeah, you might need a dedicated video card or something. I don't know what your computer is, and this isn't a show on computer stuff, so we'll probably move on. But
anyway. One of those Macintosh $60,000 computers, those Mac Pros, whatever.
This summer, I think I'm going to get myself a new Mac. Maybe if Mac sponsors our show. I'll put in some graphic there so they can try to give me money. Long story short, people have seen this, have heard the song that I disputed at the time, but realized that it must have been just a roadblock I was in, because it's a great Byron song. Unless it's something that's a real toe tapper, initially my first blush will always be, yeah, that was good, but it takes me a while to absorb it. Like anything, it's funny how if you listen to something and give it time, you start hearing all those little special moments.
The song's been driving me crazy all this week, for sure. I've been we've
Your
had
patient zero, right?
sure we've had this discussion before. I do know that when I give you stuff, you're only getting a first listen and stuff like that. I do know that most of the stuff that I do give you, I sort of live with it, and I've had. Brian sort of experienced the same thing I do. When you start listening to it 2 or 3 times, it just becomes revoltingly in your head. You can't get to sleep. So, but that's the good that's the good thing. But there's nothing more beautiful than having Manon stuck in your head for a few days.
Yeah, and she's a beautiful woman too. I mean, she's the whole deal. I was also likening what we were just talking about to, I know you didn't play in like an ensemble much when you were young, but they're mostly your songs. But as, from my experience, it was always, when the writer would bring in a new song to the band, you kind of go, I don't think I like this too much. And then you're noodling and you come up with this thing that you haven't played before, and the juxtaposition of the two parts, you're going, I really like that song now, and all of a sudden, you got it. It's funny how it's like a viral infection, but it takes something. I know for a musician, if the way you're coming up with parts for someone's song, it takes you to break through to come up with something to go, I see it now. It's a little egotistical, but...
No, I agree with you, and I think as a writer, it's up to you to sort of set the table for, if you're in a band, for the rest of your bandmates. Now, I've noticed having other musicians play for me, there's ways you can get them to do stuff that they normally wouldn't do. So I always remember a top-notch piano player we had in the studio when I was doing The Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey. He was just ridiculous. I think he was in the conservatory and stuff like that. And I remember sort of befriending him before he was about to play. I think John had him for some other session, so he said he would do something for me. And I remember telling him...
Like a classical player?
He was a jazz player, classical player. He was... I think it was like one of those hired guys and stuff like that. And so the way I set up... So I think it's up to the writer to sort of set it up for the musician. So they can either be really pissed off with you and tell you to go stick it, or you can just sort of throw them a bone, maybe throw them words that might inspire them in some sort of direction, or say a lot or not say a lot, show them a few notes, don't show them a few notes. So I remember this piano player, he was the opposite. I said to him, now I'm going to stick you in the in the thing, and I'm going to roll it. I'm not even going to tell you what the chords are. I'm not even going to tell you what the song is. Just start playing for me, and I'll time it at 5 minutes, and then you're out. And he loved me for it. He said, I come in for all these sessions and stuff like that, and they've always got the notes written down, or the guy's really specific about it and stuff like that. So my thought would be is, this piano player is super talented. Who am I to really sort of chuck stuff at him? Let him sort of do his shtick and see what comes out in 5 minutes, and I'll call it a day. Because I know whatever he gives me, there's something that'll be brilliant to be used. Stuff like that. Sure enough, he loved me. He said it was one of the best sessions he had done in years, because I didn't ask him. I just asked him for his talent. Just sort of, you go, and of course he picked it up within like 3 seconds, stuff like that. So yeah, so as a band, so we're being in a band, you're talking about the politics of being like in a group, right? Like as human beings and stuff like that. So you can be the pompous songwriter and walk in and go, this is it, boys, and this is... Paul McCartney's got the famous story about doing Hey Jude, and George Harrison. Now think about that. Hey Jude is one of the most iconic Beatles songs.
I won't play it all if that's what you want.
George wanted to do call and answer things. He wanted to play, so Paul would sing the melody and he would answer it like with a guitar line. And Paul said, Paul was the writer, and Paul said, no, that's not what I hear in my head. And I think George was a bit chuffed by it and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that was sort of the start of their sort of... I don't think that they really...
it's amazing they got 10 years out of it.
Yeah, but you could hear at the end Paul sort of making up with it, because especially on Abbey Road, something, and Here Comes the Sun. I mean, where's John in these sessions? I mean, he's in a car accident or something like that. So yeah, so Paul's really... you can hear Paul McCartney all over.
Well, they were the original buddies that came in together.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
George Harrison could play that whatever song that he could play.
But you can hear Paul McCartney trying to make it up to George Harrison musically on something. Like, I mean, it's based all over the place, but I mean, it's Paul saying, I'm sorry, George, I'm sorry, George.
Well, you know, it's funny how people say, oh, the Beatles, they broke up after. I'm thinking, you know, even in my own experience, it's so hard to keep four wheels on that car.
Oh, for sure.
Because everybody, you know, even myself, you know, I'm with you in the studio and we're thinking up of a track and I'm going, oh, Byron, I think my idea is better. And I'm going, who the hell am I? Like, this guy is proven to... But I mean, that's what I love about musicians. They're still pig-headed to think, yeah, but I want my decision to be selected. I think my idea is better. Everybody thinks that.
I never... So you always say better. I never...
Well, you know, it's not better. It's just, this is what we should do.
Sure, to have a vision like that, but you sort of want to throw out I mean, I think you'd be slightly more strident in early on in your life about ideas. You know, this is the way we're going to fucking do it, stuff like that. You can listen to me, stuff like that. But I think as you get older and you realize that actually having other human beings can help you take an idea and actually bring it up a few levels and stuff like that. Especially when you're working with talented people, you have to trust with you actually have to trust yourself, to trust your bandmates, right? They are talented people and stuff like that. But as a songwriter, when you come into the band, you have to be smart enough not to piss people off and stuff like that. You want people to contribute to your song that you do, and you want them to sort of bring their shtick to it and stuff like that.
You didn't have to go through, you know, when you think of singer-songwriters, which you are, I hate to classify you as that, but you know, as the artist guy, 90% of those situations is the guy and the band, you know? And so I think you're always it's a little more tough because you're looking at your bandmates as, and I'm not trying to say that.
No. So like when I was in a punk band,
like I want to do it all my way because I'm the guy with the vision. I know it should be done.
So when I was in a punk or the TMR or whatever like that, and we were in Toronto, and I had a so I'm 2021. I'm on the beaches of Toronto, and I had we had a manager, Jeff Barkin.
What was the name of the band then? TMR?
TMR Experimental Firm. I don't know what name we were going with back then.
What did TMR stand for?
Trademark registered. So it was sort of like the Public Image Limited at the time, sort of the corporate stuff like that. Really original.
Is this Belgian Baby? Is this around that time? There's a song Byron has. If we actually have live, we can play it for you right here.
That's one of the earlier ones. So it was the stuff that we were doing. Okay, so it was the stuff we were doing. So we had some manager. We signed a contract with him. He was a psychotic. He went. He was in the Kingston psych ward, and we were signed to this guy. And this guy had promised
while he was in the ward.
Yeah, well, this guy had promised us a European tour and a world tour
with
and stuff
Napoleon.
like that. Yeah. So, anyways, but he. So I'm in a band, and so he invites me to Toronto by myself, separate of the band. Because I'm the singer-songwriter. So you're talking about divisions in a band and stuff like that. So JP and weren't very sort of happy with it. I was ushered off to Toronto. Mm-hmm. I got to see Jack Richardson.
From Nimbus 9.
The guy.
He was with Bob Ezrin.
Yeah.
He did Alice Cooper to Guess Who, yeah.
I was up in his office. He was sitting there, and I was sitting there with a acoustic guitar, and I did a couple songs for him.
And he went with the cane or what?
Something like that, because the songs I did were not songs that people liked. I sort of wrote two songs on the beach because I'm the singer-songwriter,
right?
Pompous fool
Your
I
newest
was.
thing is the best.
So I remember I did some song. I sang two songs for him, and then as we were leaving, he motioned to a picture of a guy, a poster on the wall of a guy. He said, "Now this is going to be the next biggest Canadian singer," because I guess he was president of the record company. It was Bryan Adams. So anyways, so they were going to give me a vocal coach back then too, and yeah, so you're talking about dissension. So yeah, so I was treated as this guitarist, singer-songwriter, and yeah, it didn't go over very well with the band at
So,
all.
like, and then you said it was kind of like a punk ensemble then?
Well, it was...
So you were writing punk songs?
No, I was writing songs...
Like Emily?
No, I was writing sort of songs like the cars are floating off the San Francisco highway type of things.
I'm not familiar with that one.
And
I'm a few bars.
there was a song called Reggington Smash. So like I was using a lot of Steely Dan chords. It was very distorted and stuff like that. Yeah,
Huh.
it was a lot of musical shenanigans.
Do we have any of that recorded?
I think JP's got a couple things. I think it might have been around. Sorry, I think JP's might. Once we get JP McDonald here, you can.
The archivist of Byron's early life.
Yeah. So, but right to get back again, we were talking about dissension in the band and working with other human beings and treating somebody sort of separate and stuff like that. Yeah. So I was stupid enough to go by myself and sort of be treated as such and think that wouldn't cause. Any sort of shit or dissension back.
Yeah,
at
see,
home.
that's what I'm saying right away. With my experience, it seemed to be from all sides that it was just day to day that it was just going to explode. And I wonder, like a group like the Beatles, when you start having that kind of success, that the tensions must be just ratcheted up. But the other thing I was going to say is when you finally get to the other end, like I think now, for you, it must be much more easier to be cavalier with your songs, like let anybody do anything they want, because you already have now 4 full-length albums plus of artwork that's produced and out there. And you now don't have to protect your area to say, I can do this, when you've proven time and time again you can do this, and now it's I'll do it.
It's getting easier and easier every day I do this, and now that I sort of I think I'm going to do another album this year, but I don't even think. That term album is like 9 or 10 songs, but I don't think I'm going to have a physical product at all. I don't think it's worth it to me. The fact that I just am now doing stuff and throwing it on YouTube as I just keep going on and on. I'm quite happy about that. I'm quite happy now to have to be able to put my lyrics up as my song goes on. And to me, to do stuff at about 2 minutes, it seems to be very logical because I'm in and out, and I'm not boring anybody, and I'm not repeating myself. So it just seems all very sort of.
Well, it's a really nice thing because you've embraced visual art now, and the fact that I love the way you're treating the text on screen and doing that transparency layer stuff. It looks like you're doing some masking work too with your what you do with music now. You seem to be doing visually, and it really blends the two nicely.
So it's fun because my day is I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and so I do artwork, and so usually I do artwork that's.
Yes, he said 3 a.m. he wakes up.
Yeah, only so I can spend a couple, maybe an hour at first in the morning, and I seem to be the most lucid at that time when I first wake up and have a coffee. But I usually am working on a visual or something of the song that I'm working on at the day when I get home from work. So it's very convenient for me, and so I just take lyrics that I'm in the middle of on a song I'm working on, and just start either drawing things or start putting lyrics.
So, for those that don't know, Byron, you get up at 3 and you go to work when?
About 5.
5 o'clock. And you're off at noon?
1.
1 o'clock. And you come back and you've started a painting every morning, he tells me. And you started a sketch or whatever, an idea. You go to work, works at a paper.
Yeah. Paper merchant.
Paper merchant.
Yeah. Commercial printing paper.
Yeah, so he's done that forever.
Yeah.
Just
it's a job.
Fill in some more of the gaps here. He's done that forever, but his real self is the outside of work hours. So he gets up extremely early, 3 a.m., is work by 5, and he's already started a painting or so. This is his current. Gets back to home by about 1, and totally immerses himself again into visual and musical art.
Yeah, that's my day, and it's fun because as far as my drawing and stuff like that, it's something I will not spend more than a day on a drawing, and that's part of the joy for me is to do something every day. As opposed to my music, where sometimes a song takes a month to finish or something like that. So doing, I feel less invested on my drawings, less sort of money in the game as opposed to my music. But it's a good combination, and especially when I do my drawing, because we've talked about it, it's one thing to be doing a drawing, but as soon as I go to work, the drawing is never completed before I go to work, but while I'm driving to work, stuff like that, I usually resolve a lot of the problems that I was having about the drawing I was just doing, stuff like that. It's very interesting to me, and even musically, how, and I've talked to other people about this creativity, and I think we've talked about this, that when you're in the middle of something and trying to create something, you might come across obstacles or problems that you can't sort of finish it off. There's something not working for you and stuff like that. To get up and walk away from it and think about it while you're doing something else, maybe driving the car and stuff like that. I've resolved so many problems as far as projects, musical things, and drawings and stuff like that when I'm away from the work and stuff like that. So yeah, so usually when I go to work, I usually sort of, this little faint bulb glows in my head, and then I spend the next few hours, I can't wait to get back off work to go home and resolve.
Well, it's interesting because, in reality, the price you've paid, which is choosing not to get married and have a family, has allowed you the freedom as an artist to explore that. You've had a really stable job that happens in such a small part of your life that it can almost be just the way you get along, to afford yourself that total freedom to do whatever you like. So you can immerse yourself in this routine that I know you love.
Yeah, I enjoy my job. I get to meet a lot of people, and I think I might be working for the rest of my life till I die, because I can't sort of I create more when I'm working than the weekends when I'm not working. I tend to procrastinate and stuff like that. When I have more limited time, I tend to do a lot more work. So I like having the routine of going away for a bit and thinking about things. Spatially in my head, it's good for me not to be always trying to think of things. Yeah.
Byron doesn't really subscribe to cell phone usage much. He doesn't have a cell phone.
No, I have no social media presence. I don't have a cell phone. I have nothing. I don't want to be. I check my email once after work. But yeah, I spend too much of my time daydreaming, trying to resolve problems in my head. I don't want to be on. I'm lucky that I don't have kids, and I don't have to have a lifeline or an emergency thing or a work sort of related thing.
You've given yourself a commission, a lifetime commission, to do your art, which I find is so interesting. This is why I like to keep a close eye on it, because when you give someone, even that freedom of non-celebrity, like, you can go anywhere you want, do anything you want, create as vastly as you want, indulge completely and utterly all your time outside of that one commitment to your thing, and you've done it. And so that makes for a very unique position.
Yeah, I've been pretty, I know, and we've talked about this, I've been pretty ruthless about my time, about not having things in the way and stuff like that. So it's my path to happiness. I mean, I think I realized 12, 13 years ago, I mean, that's the experience of growing older. So you just go out and you experience life, and you find out the things that make you happy, you find out the things that you don't. So I think it became very logical to me early on to not do the things that don't make me happy and continue on with what makes me happy. And so
Well, you're a true example of not conforming that way. All of us, male, female, that have hooked up and produced litters and all, no matter how free you say you are, you're not, to a certain point. And that's, and I'm not saying it's like chains, but it's you have certain responsibilities that, unfortunately, you can't indulge yourself those pleasures. And I'm glad there are people like yourself that have chosen to do that, especially the valuable and creative artists. Anyway, so I was thinking that maybe we should take a break now because we were supposed to get into our funny times at my studio.
We'll do that. Yeah,
we'll do that next. But anyways, that as well sort of hopefully gave you some more insight as to what's rolling around in his noggin.
Blah, 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 blah.
So, see you soon.
If only you're only my only, then please tell me good. Please tell me. You should be so lucky. In your jeans, you're giving me the middle finger. I'll be a number one.
So is this the blackmail edition? Are we ensconced in blackmail right now?
Well, no blackmail. Just blasts from the past, Throwback Thursday, whatever you want to call it.
Is this to mock me or something? We have going.
Well, I think at this point, anything you'll hear in this little segment is, just as funny for all of us.
So this was all done in your studio. So the studio, what did you call it? Bat Studio?
Bat Studio.
Why Bat Studio?
Way back in the early days when John and I were starting, I believe Bats was a euphemism for
Peanut butter sandwiches.
Peanut butter sandwiches. So it kind of just stuck. And I love Batman. I love that oversaturated color that Batman used to be. I loved everything about Batman when I was younger. And it just sounded natural. So that's what we went with. And when I ended up taking the stuff on the shotgun deal, and John went on and bought new stuff, I got ensconced in my basement and you came along. But like many other musicians, I had a project studio where I worked with a lot of single songwriters looking for assistance and just fleshing out their tunes. So
it was you and was it always you, or it wasn't you and John? It was you had Bats and John had K Sound, right?
After we split, yes.
Right. Okay. So, but John was with Bat Sound, like.
Yes, John and I started basically together. He had originally formed a band called The Tactics before I came to Ottawa, and he had some success with them. And when I moved to Ottawa, and that split was where I went off on my own and pretty well right away picked up with you, and we're doing Bite Down Hard.
Right. So, but before then, you guys did like a lot of Cher Shea stuff back then and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because of your love of Batman, you would wear the Batman costume, and John would wear the Robin costume and the tights.
No.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah. So, anyways, what we're gonna get onto here is
what he was just trying to say is that there are other people in the studio other than Mike. It's not all about me, but it should have been. But there were other people that actually showed up at the studio that actually paid their bills and stuff like that. So I must say, it's one of the things about when you work at a studio where there are other musicians coming in and stuff like that. It's very exciting to see what when people want to come into a studio, they generally have physically got up and usually have songs and usually have some ability to play. And I'm always interested in seeing other people, and they're just as interested in their own thing as I am in my own thing. And it's really neat to see, for the most part, other than a few of your rappers that came by and stuff like that, for that, you generally get really passionate people that are into their own thing. And I've always enjoyed that about the studio. And that was one of the great thrills about coming in and doing the album and stuff like that, was the other people that passed by. And they all had their little stories. And you would nick, I'd be looking for things that you could nick off them, like whether it was an idea or a song and stuff like that. It was almost like a little competition in such way. So yeah, it's always great to have other people pass by. However, there was one guy named Les, and I think we've talked about him before. Our friend Les, and we don't know what was happened to him and stuff like that.
No, No.
Okay, so
Basically,
so
no.
interesting about Les. I don't think he had any technical musical ability. I don't believe he played a guitar or anything like that.
No, he could like just find his way onto some notes, you know, in a pentatonic box or something.
Right.
And not like he's soloing. He's just sort of showing you notes, and of course, because the major and the minor scales are pretty close there.
Yeah, so just set up. Les came from Western Canada, Alberta, I think, like
I think
that.
so.
Seemed to be like he came from the farm or something like that. He was a government lad, came here, and came with a box, basically a shoebox of lyrics. He was like best way
He
to
fashioned himself to be a country and western crooner.
Sure, country and western crooner. All he had was these lyrics, and he had a very sort of very focused idea of what he wanted and how he wanted it. But it was his ability or inability to translate that musically into something. So he came to Steve looking to get his... so he had previously gone to Nashville or something like that. So these...
Well, I think because he was posted across Canada in his various functions, he would find project studios across the country to help him finish up his little projects, you know, which each of his songs were. And so when he came here, he would either bring with him pre-produced tracks that he would hire Nashville guys to interpret from his poems. I don't think he'd even give them any like chords or anything. He would just say, "Here's my poem," and they would put it to music. They're so good, and they just crank them out.
Yeah.
So they'd send him back like the version sans vocal, so he could bring it to his studio, and then they would sing a version as well that was really good. But he would either bring those to us, or he would come to us with maybe he had a Spanish guitar, and he had to use that one because he would literally just pick out, "I said to you, I want to kiss you." Very basic, "show you and I," Byron and I. And then it's almost like I said to someone, for me the interest was, it was like, I like doing like puzzles, you know, picture puzzles. It's the same thing. You're going, this is what he's got, nice guy, he's paying his bill, let's do it. Let's see how we can do this song. You know?
Yeah, so Les came along, and Steve had asked me to lesson of a vocalist, and
I'm sorry, we've missed the whole point here.
But there was nobody else around. I'm sure you asked your neighbors. You had held signs downtown looking for a vocalist, and I think you went through everybody in the population of Ottawa, and then you asked me. You said, "Do you think you could sing for Les?"
Sorry to interrupt. Upon one of my earlier meetings with Les, he said, "Well, I don't have a singer." Like, he was a very, very demure fella. "I don't have a singer." And I said, "Well, a friend of mine's a singer, and he might help us out because he loves being in the studio." And I played him a track of yours and fell in love with your voice right away. I said, "That's the guy."
Yeah, nice that he had hearing problems, but he asked me to sing, and I thought it was a wonderful thing to do because it was such a different thing, because my album was all about me and stuff like that, and it's nice to go do somebody, to put your own music or your own musicality in somebody else's project. And I must say, I felt a sort of kinsmanship with Les, although he was very sort of quiet and stuff like that. I respected his passion for trying to get something out. So we were doing country music, and so he liked sort of these very sort of, so country music or traditional country music, or what you sort of hear, they're just sort of very sort of strict templates that they have, and it's more about storytelling and stuff like that. It was kind of like a fun thing to do on the side. It was such a different thing for me, and something that I really enjoyed. But I mean, some of the songs were, Les was kind of a lonely guy and stuff like that, and so we did a lot of the songs were, that in itself, that's sort of a songwriter's trope, being lonely or not having a connection to somebody in life and stuff like that. So I would go in and I would sing these songs for him, and interestingly, Les would produce my vocals. I would try and get it to close to how he wanted it to sound, but he was very specific with the meter, how I sang it. I think Steve remembers many times that we went through the songs, and there'd be a simple 2-phrase word like it did. What was it? It did or something?
It was.
Right.
But, so
it was. It did. It did.
This was during...
It did.
Les came in with a full Christmas album. Like, there was 10 Christmas songs he had written.
Oh, yeah.
And now, on that album, we didn't play anything. It was just Byron interpreting vocally his songs. Now, if you've been following this podcast, you know Byron is already in left field, and then he's running left. And Les is about as down Main Street, old-timey country
as
you can get. As opposite as you can get. So, no matter what, this was going to create an interesting juxtaposition, and on Les writing a Christmas album, and these guys interpreted the songs really well. Like, it was very Christmassy and all. And he had to sing all these Christmas albums, like Granny got run over by a reindeer.
Yeah, so all these Christmas things are all blackmail, worthy of blackmail, which I hope you would have gotten rid of, but I know.
So on the one song, there was a point in the song when he was telling the song in this. He's telling the story in the song about this story about Christmas really happened. It did, and the "it did" got into about a 2-hour marathon of Les going into the talkback. It did, and Byron would go, "It did," and it went back and forth. I'm not joking, for an hour. To where
didn't I at one point say it fucking did?
He was angry. I don't see him angry very often, but it was one of the, I don't know if it's saddest or funniest studio times ever in the history of studios.
Well, then
anyways, but that kind of that epitomized our time with Les.
Do you think after he finally allowed us to be fed, and it was about 3 or 4 days, basically, that he refused us to go until I got it did.
He was determined. That, and then, like you said, he was determined, and that was, I guess, to be somewhat in awe of. Right,
and so we ended up doing a couple other songs. Les was incredibly prolific with his lyrics. He had a ton of stuff, like just a whack load of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we ended up, what did we end up doing? 2 albums for him, or singing 2 things?
Well, it's hard to say because I don't think he ever released an album. We probably did like 30, 40 songs.
He did have a cassette at the end, though. Didn't he have a cassette that he had with a title on it and stuff like that? And he had that credits at the end.
It was just like a cassette that was just like, I don't know. I think he, kind of like you, for a whole different reason, just kind of tucked them away and moved on.
Right. So Les would even have more inability to go out and do something with it because he didn't play or anything like that.
I mean, as much as he was an awesome person, really nice guy, it just, he wasn't going to be a recording star in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That's not anything wrong to say.
Well, I think there's a lot of people end up like that, but I think that you have to go through what he did to sort of realize at some point, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to...
Well, we're spending a lot of time on him. Why don't we just play a song from... This one, for me, it epitomizes Les because it is, even from the title...
What is it?
Wyoming Quadrille. I mean, have you heard more of a country-sounding song than Wyoming Quadrille from a guy from Alberta?
No, it's a wonderful title. That whole quadrille, I really love that. I don't think I ever heard that word, or it was slightly unfamiliar to me, but I love that title, Wyoming Quadrille.
This one, I'm trying to think who, I'm wondering if we had,
did we do something to it?
Al Bragg playing steel, pedal steel or something, because I think it's us doing the rest of it. Anyways, let's take a listen to it. You'll get an idea of what Les is. Yeah. Imagine Les writing the song, the lyrics and everything, and us coming up with the rest for him.
I think we did one other song like that.
There's a number of them. I can play a bunch. This is typical Les. Here we go.
Aren't you going to play
it's right here.
Aren't you going to play the worst Christmas song?
Well, first I want to play just a typical Les country song that we would have interpreted for him.
Let me listen to it.
I wouldn't cross on
just like the record name of Fitzgerald. So it's got like 65 verses.
Yeah, well, he wasn't short on lyrics. We can probably stop. There might be a little bit more.
It's making me cry.
Boots on the
ground, hard in
It did.
Again, we were lacking a soloist. I can almost finish this up.
So 65 verses later.
Yeah, we say less isn't short for words, but it evokes that old school country that
More is less.
It's like if you ever wanted to just play as a country dude, this is what his stuff would allow you to do. Play as in pretend you're a country guy.
I think all the songs sound like that, don't they? Something like that.
Well,
It was
in
all
some
that.
way. Now, if you remember, there was one song that Les brought to us, and it was in the typical country vein lyrically, but we asked, can we just do this one our own way? It'll be a Les song, but a little less.
What was that called again?
Callous Tinkering.
Oh yeah, Callous Tinkering.
Callous Tinkering.
That's a great title.
Who would have come up with Callous Tinkering?
That's wonderful.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I would have ever thought those two words would come together when I woke up this morning. Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
It's interesting because people, our 7 viewers, are probably thinking, how do you turn that into a musical phrase? Callous Tinkering.
What's it about too? I bet you that would look really good on the screen. Just those words, Callous Tinkering.
Maybe I'll try to, decipher it and type it in as it goes along. But Callous Tinkering, you have to think, oh, that biatch, she was doing some callous tinkering to me.
I might have to steal it. Okay,
let me take a look and see. I need my specs here for this
You don't
one.
have to play it if you don't want.
Whoa, I'm over here. I keep forgetting we're on the newfangled
You can do that
system
later.
here.
You can do that later. We don't have to listen to it.
No.
No, I'm here to do that.
Callous Tinkering, you ready? Here we go. We may not have to listen to the whole bit.
Okay.
Sounds like an 80s production, like John Hine, what's that guy? John Waite, Missing You, that kind of thing. So this is us asking him, let us update your style a little bit.
Can you stand so lonely, wondering why it's always you facing hands?
Is that you doing the slide there?
Slide, that's a whammy bar.
Oh, that's you.
I like how I just go with the bass. It stung. That's a good get through to the chorus.
Heart so fragile,
Gentle soul. Every once in a while, like funny how words just pop back up in your head.
That's crazy that you can remember that shit.
It's just the end of the line once in a while.
growing distance, protect yourself.
But how classic of an 80s interpretation,
And we both had flock of seagull haircuts. Don't you? All this and it keeps going. We haven't got to the chorus yet. Eh? How many verses? It must be like 70.
I'm sure we cut out some. Oh, gotta go here. Yeah.
Living on hope and wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be nice to find love? Trying to cope with careless tinkering. Tonight your heart needing love, needing love.
Okay. And so on and so on.
So yeah, so I do remember, just to wrap Les up, so Les was a wonderful experience. I don't know what happened to him, but I do remember at some point...
You said wrap him up. I'm sorry, we have another.
I was just trying to avoid the blackmail case. No, but he did have a cassette at the end that was sort of a final thing. He did give it to you, and it was worth noting that the credits, don't you remember the famous credits, that it was dedicated? Should we say? Well, of course it was. It was somebody's passion. So Les wrote at the end of his... He had a cassette. Was it a cassette or did he do it on CD? He had something.
No CD.
Okay, so he had a cover. He had the songs, and on the back he had all the credits and stuff like that. And he dedicated his album to the girl I saw at the blank Mike grocery store in the produce department. And yeah, I think very sad, but almost creepy.
So sometimes we get songs from Les, and they were finished, but he loves Byron's voice so much that he's now going to take off the other singer that he had, and he wanted exact copies of the one.
What is this?
This one is one of his more heartfelt ones called "Lazing with My Teddy Bear."
Oh my God.
Lazing in the shade with my teddy bear, no worries, no cares. He says something's bugging him as all day, and I better beware. Is he displeased, missing what fills his needs? That's hugging, hugging and a snuggling. Honey, won't you hug me, please? Hug me a little, hug me dear. Hug me till the morning sun comes clear. Whisper, sweet nothing's nice. Make me feel so right. Hey, honeybee, hug me please.
Okay. Sorry, but I didn't mean to wake you up. That's crazy. So there were. I'm not joking you. There were at least an album and a half worth of those. I Love My Tractor, Lazing with My Teddy Bear.
Do you have the other list, titles of the songs on there just to go over them? Okay, all right.
That's just, I love,
Now
yeah.
can we wrap
So
it up?
anyways, so there was a lot of clients in my studio, like Les, that Byron and I would work on together and help them out. And you know what? It was really good value for them. They had a great artist, and I thought it's a hoot for me because I'm hearing what I consider a great artist working with people that are just doing it as a pastime, you know, and it was just fun. It was fun and a great way to spend time in the studio.
Yeah, but our favorite though of that time. So every once in a while, some of the guys that would pass through would just be like the real deals in their own little world. And who's the guy that? Did he come from Gatineau? What's his name?
Yeah, Gilles Seguin, I think, or Gilles. I think it was Seguin. But
Rand McGuy walks into the studio, and we end up doing like one of the funnest things.
Yeah, you know, it's not like we reinvented anything, but I do remember that this is pretty well first we figured out, you know, kind of just charted out a few chords and said, let's just jam to it. So it was just a 3-piece, really.
Yeah.
And him singing, and again, it's not the greatest work of art, but it was just something that we really liked about it. I'm sure those of you that have worked in project studios know that there's a ton of people out there that have written, you know, 2 or 3 songs, and that's probably the extent of their output, but they work hard on those 2 or 3 songs. Mm-hmm. This was Gilles, one of the clients at the studio, and us having fun with them. It's called
Absolutely.
Half Empty. We were playing songs with a 4-inch pipe, and we laughed for about 6 hours.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. It's a great song, I think.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Remember the time frame early 80s.
Wanna get down there, 'cause that's where the good winds blow. It's where my heart seems to be, but like anything else I see. Wanna breathe in the clean air, play them songs with the 4-inch pipe. Live a life of do or dare. Feel the full moon blow on me every night.
Super glam rock sounding. It's like Mark Bolan, eh? Very Mark Bolan.
Yeah. My fondest recollection though is when he was singing it, and I remember I think we looked at each other and said, "Did he just say playing songs with a 4-inch pipe?" I thought I wouldn't be saying that out loud. So every time he sang it, it would kill me. But good time.
Sounds wonderful. So, but you had other things that, now I remember you were telling me a story about a whole album that you did at your studio. You used to work at a restaurant, didn't you? And you ended up doing, so like, I mean, Steve was not only doing my stuff, but his stuff, well, since we're in blackmail world.
Sure, it's all free. And
So you had a client that was a cook at the restaurant that you used to work at, and you wrote and orchestrated and composed a whole album for him.
in the early days of multi-tracking and sequencing and stuff, I had a cook at a restaurant that I worked at. I was bartending, and a super nice guy, Waleed. And one day at work, and this again was, early 90s. No, actually it was before that, I think. Yeah, late 80s. He came to work one day and said, how much for you to write an album for me? And I was like, yeah, if I write an album, I don't do that, but...
And he had no lyrics or anything like that? He had nothing? No ideas? No titles? No...
I can't remember if he had some things scratched down, because it was pretty basic, or if he scratched them down after I delivered the songs. But so I said, oh, well, $2,000. And he said, okay, here's $1,000, get going. Oh, holy shit, okay. So I wrote 10, I'm saying I wrote. I just came up with 10 musical things that I turned into long enough that he could say his words over.
Yeah.
So I know Byron just wants me to get to playing them because they're pretty funny.
I don't find them funny at all. I find them very interesting, especially given what you were quested to do, and then coming up with what you did and what the tools that you had. So it was a MIDI, right? It was all sort of MIDI-ized and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to get through it best I can. I don't write full songs. I'm a side guy.
I know.
I come up with parts for your songs.
That's why it's so interesting to talk about this to me.
And because I appreciate you opening up in this whole podcast deal, I thought, whatever you want to hear, it's fair game with me too. I'm not proud of this.
Not proud because we did play it a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, like, whatever you played.
I scuffed through it, but even me, who can be an egotist at times, I can't listen to it very long.
It's very dated sounding, I would guess, with all the snips and stuff like that, right?
The only existing copy I had was on cassette, so the transfer I did to digital, it goes all over the place. The quality is horrible, but it's a timepiece. It just says that's what you're doing at the time, and it was early sequencing and dance songs.
Was
and
it all
stuff.
synths?
I'd add some bass guitar and guitar, but I knew that I could get through a song pretty quickly on the drum machine and a few sequence parts, create a couple of things. But it is so, forewarned, it is the cheesiest stuff you've ever heard in your life.
Is it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you could find. Let's see. Is there anything cheesier than what you're going to hear? I don't know. Do you want to hear?
So Steve likes to set his songs up in this fashion. He's trying to lower expectations.
I don't think I could ever get prepared for.
So if all you hear is a penny whistle and a bottle cap,
and truthfully, there's 10 of them. I figured I should give them 10 songs, $200 a piece. That's probably what they're worth.
So, but that's the kind of stuff that you were doing. Was that stuff? It was like share stuff
Yes.
that you'd be putting together for other people. You'd be writing albums for other people. I remember you did a whole pile of backing tracks for somebody who was in sort of Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff.
A friend from my hometown. So I would do drums and bass for people, or it's a project studio. So people would come to you and say, a math teacher would come and say, I want to do a rap cassette for kids to learn the times tables, and I would, I'm working with a young rap band. I bring them in and I meet them. You're gonna meet this person, and they would. And I'm basically a facilitator,
It's such an interesting concept, I find, because really you're using your creativity, but people are sort of throwing you sort of problem-solving things. Can you do this for me? Can you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sort of having to deal with people and what their expectations are, so like learning after that sort of experience. So you must have learned a lot. I mean, like that was your sort of formative years about sort of putting things together. Doing that album was important. Just sort of putting things, orchestrating. Like, did you learn stuff when you were orchestrating?
It's funny. I mean, as poor a musician as I am, I don't read music. I just by ear.
Oh, I know. You're the worst.
Sounds like I play with my ear.
It's terrible.
That being given, the best thing I've done is spend all those years programming drums, because whether I wanted to or not, my meter got very good. And I've always said I'd rather play with musicians who have good meter than are flashy musicians. If you play and you commit to a tempo, you can make anything sound good. And you don't have to be super great, So if anything, I'm very happy for being in at the ground floor sequencing and stuff. So you kind of understood where it's all coming from technology-wise, and then how it fits in musically to this stuff.
Did you always have that drum machine?
I had, we had a bunch of others. I mean, everybody would know the Roland TR-707, the white deal with the orange stripes. It was like, it had 16 basic notes along here, it would let you program in basically a bar of 16th notes, whatever you wanted to do with it, and then copy that and then alter it. Very rudimentary sounds. But then my workhorse of choice was the R8 drum machine, because it had the cross samples. You could load in other cards. You could do all kinds of stuff. You could do a lot of really good humanization to stuff. But I think you also learn what drummers don't do, which is hit every drum all at the same time. You have to be very selective. And it was that's what I liked about that time in the studio, was just learning how to sequence, learning how to program drums, learning, song structures. But song structures, they're just dance songs.
Yeah, I also excuse me. I also remember that time being sort of interesting, because we started first getting kids, younger kids. So we were in our early 30s, but kids in their 20s. Wanting to do rap stuff, so that was just very sort of early on and stuff like that. That was interesting. That seemed like such another world, and these kids coming down with their beats and their rhymes, as they call it. Excuse me. It was all sort of the same stuff, anyways. It was just different, like nomenclature. So like these guys were just sort of tripping their lyrics and stuff like that. So I remember you putting together a couple things. Sort of rap things as well, stuff like that. So really, you're getting a whole sort of wide sort of swath of things being thrown at you in that studio.
Yeah, like any engineer, I'm sure, in any studio. I just happen to be the ground floor for most people.
Well, that's what I guess that studio was, essentially sort of a ground floor for people first trying out and stuff like that.
That's what we call project studios. You bring your project in and we get you going. Like with Byron, I knew that after we were finished, you still needed the room to fill up, There's some people that at my studio that was more than enough room for them to fill up.
So you're not going to play that stuff at all?
Well, I don't mind playing one.
But I'm just saying, it's just sort of for the cast of characters, because we did go over some of this stuff a couple of weeks ago before we came here. And so just saying, you know, you talk about the real deal and stuff like that. Your friend from Brockville too. You played a song.
Yeah.
Sounds like a guy. So super talented.
That's Mike Hart.
Just beyond super talented, but for whatever reason, just sort of can't sort of get his. So it's one thing to have a lot of ideas and stuff like that, but it's another thing to physically be able to get them down onto paper and.
He can. He's one of those guys. You know, he never seemed to have a lot of gear and all, but whenever you gave him that playground, holy crap, the stuff he could put together.
Right. So somebody that just sort of stays away from the playground, perhaps, you know, super talented and stuff like that, but like for whatever 50 million reasons. I mean, like you played it and you're just sort of thinking, boy, buddy, if you just sort of spent a bit of time and honed your craft and stuff like that.
Well, you know, and I'm sure there's people right now who really their real talent is social media and all. Their real talent is not musical production. Look at you going, damn, if I could do what that guy does, man, I'd have 1 trillion viewers. Well, everybody comes at it from a certain thing, and, you know...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the old trope with me. This is my old buddy JP, who's now Johnny Vegas, stuff like that. What we always said, so that was he was the bass player in the band I grew up with, and JP never has a problem going out and his shtick is going out and meeting people, and I always remember when I was doing the Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey, we went to the Manx, which is down on Elwood Street, and JP was first starting out doing his Johnny Vegas. He was walking around in his red velvet jacket. People were standing up along the bar, and he's walking around the bar with a microphone in his hand and going like that. And I remember looking at him going like, you know, damn it, I wish I had part of that in my genes and stuff like that. And of course, JP's always said the opposite. You know, he said he always wished he sort of had sort of the ability to write songs and stuff like that that I did and stuff like that. So and I'm not saying JP is not a musician in any way, but JP certainly has that thing about wanting to go out and make people happy and stuff like that. And it's slowly just eroded away from me. Yeah, I'm much more happier just being in the studio doing my stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, it takes all kinds, right? That's the whole thing is, you know, it's like American Idol, like, everybody fashions themselves to be so good, you know, yet I know that most of the friends I hang out with, we're just falling over ourselves to say how crappy we are. Because, you know, we know the reality of how tough it is and all, but there's so many people that are oblivious to maybe this isn't your calling, you know? But they just press forward. Like if I went out and thought, I'm going to become an Olympic skier, you know, within a couple of trips, I'm sure people are going, I'm not, and I'm going, but I'm gonna. You know, I know I'm good enough, although, you know, skiing's probably a bad analogy, but...
So you probably get, so the best probably example right now is the old trope about being president of the United States, that the guy that gets to be president of the United States is probably not suited to be president of the United States.
Of course.
He has the ability to get there, but most guys that probably would be excellent presidents probably don't want to go through all the shit to get to be president.
Of course.
And Exhibit A is look at what is president down in the States. You have
the ego of all time.
And just incredibly incompetent
he doesn't care.
Individual. Yeah, but
he's even to, you know, it's transcended normalcy to where someone comes out and says, I'm the smartest of all time. Nobody's this more than me. Like, you know how ridiculous that sounds?
Yeah.
Anyways.
I stopped doing that. The intellectual dishonesty is something I can't
Did you
do.
want to hear... I'm going to turn this wall guy off. Unless you wanted to hear some of this. You know, we were talking about this guy's crap. So I didn't mean crap. I'm going to have to cut that whole part out.
No. Yeah, fine. I thought we were sort of... I can't think... Is there anything else you want to talk about your studio and stuff like that we did and stuff like that? Just sort of
so we don't need to hear this?
Do you want to play it? I mean, like...
Well, I don't need to, but, you know, I was saying I just want to be fair. I've been playing all kinds of stuff of yours.
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
I just mentioned it and stuff like that.
Maybe we'll go out with it instead of, you know, typically the Dunno song.
I think you should play some of that stuff, but if you don't, then that's humanity's loss.
We don't have to listen to it at full volume. This is me early attempt at sequencing.
So, like, what type of keyboard stuff had you done previous to this? Was like, what were you doing? Everything in C? Everything on the white keys and pressing a few black keys? Just Well,
like... Wait, here comes the cool part. What I find funny is because I didn't never learned how to play piano, I can maybe stumble my way through one or two songs very slowly, but I'm no keyboard player. But like you, I think I've had a pretty decent ear all my life, knowing when something's in the proper key, you know, like if something sounds good. And I think we always took that attitude too. I don't care if...
Well, I'm just gonna... Will you dance to my song?
A lot of times people say that's not the right note, but if it sounds cool, I say, take it. So yeah, this sounds like the worst detective TV show music.
It's
wait,
really...
wait a second, here comes one.
People always stuck in, but there's no comprehension in what they say.
So
So do you believe what you
you
hear?
can hear the guy singing.
What does it mean?
Super good guy. He just wasn't a singer, and he would take a lot of takes to get
Lean the cold shoulder
this.
when you got nothing.
It's like early twerking.
Well, I'm telling you something, girl. This boy is much older and
Here we come to the big hook. Someone else was singing that, not him. That's for sure. And you know what? Everything I do
Is that
before.
Jimmy?
That's before. I'm trying to think who it is.
No, I think that's Jimmy. Easy now.
So that was Wall, and I had to put together 10 dance songs like that. But not like that. They were vastly different. It was like an amazing album. I think it got to number 628,000 on the albums of all time.
I think it sounds wonderful.
Well, you
Or
know
as
what?
bad as you say it is.
Sure. Because it's all the past, and you say, you know what?
What was the sound module again? Like that's all 8-bit stuff? Is that all? 8-bit? Is it like a Roland little rack thing or?
Because that may have even been before the S10 sampler. I think that was,
Yeah, I'm not hearing
probably
any
the
samplers.
TX81Z or the DX100, all that kind of stuff. Very, very
It
rudimentary.
sounds like that Yamaha stuff. Yeah.
So the idea is that
You know, that to me the backing track sounded fine. If you really had somebody who could chante on top of it, it would sound fantastic. It would sound like $1 million. No, seriously. I think the vocals, yeah.
well, so the idea is that
That was very convincing, wasn't it?
it's heartfelt. So while Byron's doing Bite Down Hard, I'm entertaining all these other clients, and he's helping me out with that. I'm taking part in Bite Down Hard. At the end of the day, we're spending all our time mixing this thing out. He puts it in his closet and then says, I've got another at least album's worth of stuff. And it's funny because just to once again wrap things up, at the end of Bite Down Hard, he was already noodling with stuff in the studio on his guitar. He's always noodling on the songs he's working on, as you all know, songwriters. Even though he's working on stuff right now, he's the genesis of a lot of new songs are coming, and I'm hearing these things, knowing that he's going off to produce them and wondering, what will come of that?
Yeah, so ended up going in a big studio. I guess that's for the next podcast. Eh?
Yeah, and that will be the Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey episode 11, because this is 10.
Cool.
That'll be 11.
Cool.
All right, out for now.
So is this where you have multiple killing video, where you're stabbing somebody, and you have this thing?
No. He wasn't sure.
Was that the instrumental?